The Master's Mysteries, Tales of Magical Mastery, Episode 29. Attack. Kill them. Liao Fengyi and Old Dao finally broke through the encirclement and rushed along a small path to the top of the cliff, thinking they could escape and survive. But to their dismay, the leader of the wooden soldiers, Wooden Monster, was already on the cliff top, accompanied by hundreds of wooden soldiers. Soon, the two of them found themselves surrounded once again. When will this fight end? It seems like we're really going to die here. Don't say pessimistic words. We can't die here. Liao Fengyi and Old Dao were already exhausted from the intense battle. They looked at the wooden soldiers flooding towards them like a tide and couldn't help but feel distressed. We have to rely on Ahu now. It's not easy. Didn't you say you had a plan? Both of them knew that if they continued fighting like this, even if they weren't killed by the wooden soldiers, they would be worn out. Liao Fengyi ran up to the cliff to observe the terrain and came up with a risky plan, but its success depended on Ahu. Meanwhile, Ahu was leaping in a crevice of a mountain cliff, occasionally poking his head out to observe. As for what he was doing, we'll talk about that later. As for the fierce battle on the cliff top, the soldiers of the wooden army received their orders and charged forward like well-trained soldiers, one row after another. Be careful, Old Dao, don't leave my side. At this point, apart from fighting, Liao Fengyi and Old Dao had no other choice. They could only grit their teeth and meet the enemy head-on. After fighting the wooden soldiers for a long time, Liao Fengyi had already grasped their tactics and moves quite well. He evaded the attack of the first charging wooden soldier, then swung his precious sword, instantly cutting the wooden soldier into two. But still, there were too many wooden soldiers, and they didn't give them a chance to catch their breath. As one fell, countless others pounced on them. Liao Fengyi clenched his teeth and forcefully pushed the wooden soldiers who came at him one after another together. Then, with a fierce thrust of his sword, he pierced through two wooden soldiers at once. Although he felt satisfied with the kills, his muscles were sore, and he could barely lift his arms. Old Dao, who was by his side, wasn't faring any better. Although Liao Fengyi protected him and intercepted most of the enemies, Liao Fengyi was only human and couldn't be everywhere at once. Moreover, the enemies were made of wood, so when you hit them, they didn't feel pain, but their attacks were enough to make you suffer. Old Dao was constantly in danger. Oh no, the ones from below are also charging up. Both of them were busy dealing with the charging wooden soldiers, but now they could hear the chaotic footsteps coming from below the cliff. Liao Fengyi couldn't help but feel even more anxious. It turned out that while the two were engaged in a fierce battle on the cliff, the wooden soldiers below the cliff had also followed and charged up. There were also many caves on the cliff face, and wooden soldiers kept pouring out from inside. Gradually, more and more wooden soldiers gathered on the top of the cliff, tightening their encirclement around the two. It was like being trapped in an airtight space. As for Ahu, he had been observing by leaping and jumping along the crevice for a while. Finally, he ran back and squeaked at Liao Fengyi. It's Ahu. In the midst of exhaustion, when Liao Fengyi heard Ahu's call, it felt like two doors had opened in his heart, instantly revitalizing his spirit. Old Dao, retreat. Receiving Ahu's signal, the two of them fought while retreating, gradually luring the wooden soldiers near the crevice. At this moment, the wooden soldiers once again charged ferociously. Liao Fengyi regained his vigor, wielding his sword and swiftly cutting down two wooden soldiers, forcefully impaling them into the crevice. That's how people are. Once they have hope, their entire body fills with strength. Under Ahu's command, more wooden soldiers were quickly impaled into the crevice. Old Dao, quickly run backward. Leave the rest to you and Ahu. Seeing the opportunity arise, Liao Fengyi shouted at Old Dao, instructing him and Ahu to prepare. I know. You, hurry up too. Old Dao was quite astute. When he saw Liao Fengyi's actions, he roughly understood his plan. This was not the time for long-windedness. He responded and immediately ran backward. Coordinating with Old Dao, Hu activated all the explosive buttons on the wooden soldiers impaled in the crevices. "Youngster, we're good to go. Hurry up. Don't take risks." After finishing, Old Dao immediately shouted loudly at Liao Fengyi, "You two, go ahead. I'll join you soon. Go quickly." But at this moment, Liao Fengyi was tightly entangled by the wooden soldiers, making it difficult to break free. Old Dao couldn't help but become even more anxious. "You go faster too." But he also understood that at this moment, saying more would only distract Liao Fengyi and make him more passive. So he turned around and ran with Hu towards the back of the cliff. Liao Fengyi knew well the danger of the plan. After cutting down several wooden soldiers in succession, he seized an opportunity, leaped backward, and ran towards the back. But escaping was not as easy as they had hoped. Hundreds of wooden soldiers from behind caught up with them. And there were also wooden soldiers constantly blocking their path ahead. Want to run? It's not that simple. When the wooden monster saw Liao Fengyi and the others swiftly fleeing towards the back of the mountain cliff, thinking they were trying to escape, he couldn't help but chuckle. Under his heavy encirclement, there was no way he would let them slip away. "All units, attack. Kill them." He then gave the order, and all the wooden soldiers mobilized, narrowing their encirclement, vowing to shred the two individuals into pieces. Little did they know that their doomsday was right in front of them. Suddenly, a deafening explosion resounded, and countless wooden soldiers were lifted into the air by the powerful shockwave. Liao Fengyi and Old Dao hadn't managed to run far and could only take cover behind some large rocks. Following Liao Fengyi's plan, the explosions continued one after another, and the thunderous sound merged into one. These crevices ran deep into the cliff, and the explosion shook the entire cliff face, causing one side of the cliff to suddenly collapse. It turned out that when Liao Fengyi reached the top of the cliff, he saw this large crevice cutting across the cliff. That's when he came up with this plan. With the wooden army being affected by the explosions, even more intense explosions ensued one after another. In a short while, the entire cliff face collapsed, and a large amount of debris filled up half of the valley. Finally, they're all dead. Be careful. Don't go any further. Only when the explosions ceased and the dust cleared slightly did Liao Fengyi and Old Dao come out of their hiding spots. "Bastard, I won't let you get away." What they saw was a scene of devastation, with rubble and wood chips everywhere. The wooden monster lay weakly among the debris. His body was in tatters, but surprisingly, one of his arms was slowly regenerating. But just as he uttered those fierce words, the wooden monster heard a familiar sizzling sound. It turned out that when he was hit by the falling rocks, his explosive device was also triggered. Before he could react, the explosives inside his body detonated, instantly blowing his body into pieces. Let's briefly talk about this wooden monster. He was originally a skilled master of hidden weapons, specializing in crafting various mechanical hidden weapons. Once, he offended a formidable expert and had his limbs chopped off, becoming a cripple. But the demonic monk from the Bai Xian sect took notice of him and attached a demonic arm to him. With this demonic arm, he crafted a wooden body for himself and killed his own enemy. Using his skills, he created a wooden army for the Bai Qian sect, becoming their chief protector. As his body became disabled, his personality became increasingly twisted. Over the years, he committed numerous atrocities, and killing became his only source of pleasure. Watching people die in agony before him would excite his innermost being. "Old Dao, we need to leave quickly." Seeing that the wooden monster was finally dead, Liao Fengyi hastily called Old Dao and hurriedly left. The commotion caused here was too significant, and soon the Bai Xian sect would send more demonic beings their way. Little did they know that on someone else's territory, their every move had long been observed by another person. Not only that, but this commotion had already alerted the entire Bai Qian sect. At this moment, deep within the Bai Qian sect's mountain, a grand necromantic ritual was taking place. Suddenly, a tremendous explosion resounded, shaking the entire temple within the mountain. It immediately caught the attention of everyone present. The demonic monk sect leader did not show signs of panic, but his expression grew dark. No need for him to say much, as the black-clothed individual behind him bowed and nodded, indicating that he understood what needed to be done. Then his massive black cloak spread open, resembling two pitch-black wings, and he leaped into the air, swiftly transforming into a shadow and flying out of the temple. Hold on a bit longer, keep running, and stay away from the enemy. I can't go on. I'm really exhausted. Under Ahu's guidance, Liao Fengyi and Old Dao ran along the rugged mountain path for a whole half-hour without daring to stop. By this point, both of them were on the verge of collapse from exhaustion, but they were solely focused on escaping and were unaware that several pairs of eyes gleaming with green light were fixated on them from the surrounding cliffs. Upon closer inspection, these turned out to be several massive starving wolves. They were encircling a figure hidden in the darkness.